In her final, fading hours, as the world she had commanded for nearly half a century began to slip from her grasp, she made her last plea. She begged her physicians and her trusted courtiers that her body be spared this fate, this fate, this fate. Let me not be opened, she commanded, hoping her royal authority might extend even a few days beyond her death. She wanted to meet her Maker as she had lived, unchanged, untouched, unbroken. But death does not negotiate. On the 24th of March, 1603, Queen Elizabeth I died, and with her last breath, all the commands and protections of her royal office vanished. The men who had bowed to her every whim now looked to the future, to a new king. Elizabeth's wishes for her body became an impractical request in the face of state, necessity, necessity. The physicians and surgeons, bound by the grim duty of managing a royal corpse for a state funeral, carried out what had to be done. Her final command was ignored. Her body was taken to the embalming room. There, her royal chest was opened. Her internal organs, the heart that had carried the hopes of a kingdom, were removed. Her liver and intestines were taken out, and in their place, fragrant spices and preserving salts were packed tightly, a desperate attempt to forestall nature's relentless course. These frantic efforts were not to honor her, but to prevent a public catastrophe. The swelling and potential bursting of her corpse. Without this intervention, the pressure of putrefactive gases could have turned her magnificent coffin into a ticking time bomb. The funerals of other monarchs had ended in horror when bloated corpses had exploded, filling sacred spaces with a vile stench. The embalmers dared not let Elizabeth's grand farewell become such a nightmare. Once the ghastly work was complete, Elizabeth's hollowed shell was wrapped in layers of cloth and rich crimson velvet, embroidered with silver Tudor roses, the symbols of a dynasty now at its end. She was sealed inside a heavy, lead-lined coffin, a sarcophagus designed not just for majesty, but for containment. The lid was soldered shut, the ceremonies began, and the final, somber journey of England's last Tudor monarch commenced. The royal barge, draped in black, carried her down the River Thames, through the grey, melancholic waters. Thousands of her subjects stood silently along the riverbanks, their faces a sea of genuine grief. The scene was solemn, beautiful, and profoundly deceptive. For those closest to the royal barge, a disquieting rumour circulated in hushed whispers. A strange clinging scent was drifting from the coffin, a sickly sweet and cloying odour that the river breeze could not entirely disperse. It was the faint, unmistakable smell of corruption, barely contained by the thick lead casing. Even in death, even after the embalmer's brutal work, Elizabeth's body was reminding the world of its inherent frailty. The gases of decay were beginning to build, seeping through infinitesimal cracks that no eye could see. Had the coffin's seals failed? England was unknowingly poised on the brink of a moment of dreadful horror. A sudden explosion, the rupturing of its most revered queen, her desecrated remains scattered before her mourning people. It would have been an omen of unimaginable darkness, but the coffin held. The coffin held. Elizabeth was interred at Westminster Abbey, laid to rest beneath the towering, hallowed stones of that sacred place. Her tomb, magnificent and peaceful on the outside, a masterpiece of marble and effigy, promised eternal rest. Above ground, her story was sealed in stone, a tale of glory. Her story was sealed in stone, a tale of glory. But beneath the floor, in the cold, silent dark of the royal vault, a very different story was unfolding. Centuries passed. Then, in the late 1800s, during the reign of Queen Victoria, the silence of Elizabeth's resting place was shattered. A man named Dean Arthur Stanley, a respected cleric and historian, was granted unprecedented permission to explore the sealed royal tombs beneath the abbey. Lantern in hand, he ventured into the cold, dark underworld of England's royal dead. The air in the vaults was thick with the scent of centuries, a dusty, close smell of stone and forgotten time. As he stepped into the Tudor chamber where Elizabeth lay, he was not greeted by the expected glory of a queen's eternal resting place. He was met with the crumbling, pathetic wreckage of time. The once beautiful outer wooden coffin had almost completely disintegrated, turned to little more than a dark powder. The rich velvet that had wrapped her body was discolored and rotting away. Even the inner lead shell, meant to last forever, had failed. It had warped and bent, collapsing inward. Faintly visible on the buckled lead lid, Stanley could just make out the ghostly, tarnished initials. E.R. Elizabeth Regina. It was a whisper of the woman who had once been Gloriana. But that was not the most shocking discovery. In the cramped, narrow space, Elizabeth's broken coffin was not alone. Lying directly on top of it, pressing it down, was another lead coffin, that of her half-sister, Mary I Bloody Mary. In life, their rivalry had torn England apart. Mary, the devout Catholic, had burned Protestants at the stake. Elizabeth, the pragmatic Protestant, had undone all of Mary's work. They were sisters and bitter enemies. Yet here, in death, they were locked together in the same narrow vault, sharing a single squalid resting place. What Stanley saw confirmed a grim, universal truth. Even the greatest of monarchs are not spared the slow, patient, and indifferent hunger of time. Elizabeth's body, embalmed with such desperate urgency, had not decayed in peace. The internal gases had continued their terrible work over the centuries until the coffin's structure failed. Above ground, tourists strolled across the polished marble floors of Westminster Abbey, admiring the serene effigy of the Queen, a portrait of eternal peace, unaware of the grotesque scene of decay that lay just a few feet beneath them. Elizabeth's tomb is more than a monument. It is a message carved not in stone, but in the very fabric of time. It is a stark reminder that even the most powerful rulers must ultimately surrender to the earth. We surrender to the earth. That velvet fades, that lead bends, that flesh, no matter how royal, succumbs to nature's final claim. Her legacy endures in books and in paintings, but her body, once adorned in gold, now rests in a dark vault of silence, its grandeur consumed by centuries of darkness. Elizabeth I, the Virgin Queen who commanded armies and outwitted kings, lies now in broken pieces. Time is the final ruler, the only true sovereign, and none, not even a queen, can outlive its reign.